Thanks, Carly. Hi, everybody. My name's Philip Pope. I'm a director of Cambridge Australia Scholarships. We have a director in each state, or we try to have a director in each state, and I'm fortunate to be the director in Queensland. So I just, with Carly's assistance, I might just walk you through some information. And actually, I'm happy for you to stop and ask questions at any time. But I know there's a Q&A session at the end. But if something really important pops up and is confusing, please don't hesitate to unmute and say hello. I would sort of preface this by saying that both my wife and I are working from home, hence my attire, and I've got, I'm homeschooling 3 children. So if we are disturbed, please do bear with me. There was French and Japanese and religious education going on earlier. So as I'm sure you're aware, anything can happen during lockdown. I just might start off, I'm making a presumption at the start of this that there's a general level of knowledge about Cambridge. But if we flick to the second slide, Carly, you might be asking yourself why to choose Cambridge University. I think it's a fairly straightforward answer. Over many centuries, it's been one of the world's great academic institutions. It is a collection of colleges, essentially. It's called Cambridge, and those colleges often are hundreds of years old. My own college is actually quite recent and is a graduate college. It's only sort of 50 or 60 years old, but many of the colleges there are hundreds of years old. And even within those colleges, there are, I was at Trinity last Christmas with our scholars, and I was pulling out some alumni there, and there are hundreds of world-renowned names just from one college alone. So why would you go to Cambridge? Because over the course of history, across almost every discipline in academia, they produce the cream of the crop. And if you want to aspire to go to one of the great institutions of the world, then I'd highly recommend Cambridge, along with some other great institutions. Cambridge rates very highly, Carly. If we go to the next slide, it always rates very highly in the list of the best institutions in the world. The last few years, I think, especially for research and postgraduate study, it's been #1. I noticed this year, I looked just before lockdown, Oxford seemed to be #1, and we seem to be #2 in one of the European lists, which irks me. But Cambridge is always there or thereabouts. I'm trying to wear as close as I can to Cambridge blue for you today. It's not quite Cambridge blue, duck egg blue, but we're over 800 years old. We're consistently there or thereabouts with a few of the American and European institutions. There are over 300 graduate courses, 21 types of qualification. I myself have got a Master's of Philosophy, and there's a whole range of qualifications under the MPhil discipline. It's a collegiate structure, so I don't know how familiar everybody on the call is with a collegiate structure. Cambridge is a bit of a myth. It really is heavily focused on college. So strangely, you have to apply to the university. You have to be accepted by the university, your department, and a college in order to get in. It is arcane, it is unusual, but there are benefits at the end. There are leading global research institutions associated with Cambridge. My old roommate, actually, he now develops cancer and other types of drugs. He did his postgrad at Harvard. He was a leading scientist in Europe, has worked in Sweden, Germany, and for the last 6 months now, he's been back attached to the Department of Chemistry at Cambridge, but working for a private drug manufacturer based in Cambridge. So I'm not a scientist per se. He's a very good one. He spent some time at Cambridge during his studies, and now he's back there working with the university to develop cures for the next range of illnesses that we're facing. AstraZeneca was listed here. It's another company he's worked for. So my experience is that if you embrace Cambridge, it opens up a world of opportunity to you. We might move on to the next slide. more than 100 libraries, 9 specialist museums. That's pretty close to my heart. I was at the Scott Polar Research Institute. Pretty unusual. Not a lot of people know it exists. Was I a scientist? No, I was more sort of international relations, diplomacy. I was studying the Antarctic Treaty System. My own institute had the best polar library in the world, and that's acknowledged. We had academics coming from all over the world to that library. My own desk was in the library, and the library also happened to be a world-renowned specialist museum, specialising, of course, in the studies of the history of the North Pole and the South Pole and everything associated with it. So if you branch outside my particular area of study, you'll find a similar experience within every realm of academia. Could you just bear with me, please, because my children are causing a massive fuss. Back in one moment.
I think a lot of us can relate to that. I have 2 children running around upstairs. Luckily, I'm on mute, so you can't hear it.
Sorry, it's sometimes with a 10-year-old and an 8-year-old, it's Fight Club in my house, and that's where we're at morning break. Hundreds of students and societies, and in fact, you know, why do you go to Cambridge? You go to Cambridge to meet people and to absorb the really intelligent people that are there, but also the experience of Cambridge. What do I mean by that? The unique college environment, a bar in every college, formal hall, which is maybe an expression you haven't heard of. People dress up in gowns and go down to Harry Potter style dining rooms each night to have candlelit suppers where they exchange, you know, academic information, but, you know, get to know one another. Especially if you're a graduate. My experience was I was at Darwin College, probably about 400 graduates in there. I was one of the youngest at 20, I think I was 23, 22, 23 when I went. Had kind of expected everybody to be my age. There were a few of us sort of in our before the age of 25. Most people, though, were sort of between 25 and 40, let's say. Some of them brought their wives, families with them. And of course, you know, rowing and sport are a big thing about Cambridge college life. You don't have to have done any of those, but you can muck in, you meet people. I've got friends all over the world. You know, I'm not an intelligent person. But a lot of the people I met at Cambridge were some of the brightest minds. And, you know, I think it's one of the best periods of my life and has really broadened my mind, my experience. More than 80 sports are offered. At Darwin, I played in the Darwin rugby team. We beat our sister college at Oxford at Rugby Sevens, which was the highlight of the year. We did pretty well in the inter-college competition, so we played every Wednesday afternoon, and of course then we're in the bar with the people we played against Wednesday nights. Wednesday, big opportunity. Captained the Darwin cricket team as well, and played a variety of sports for college. You know, typically people would turn up in the bar and say, right, I'm the captain of squash, I'm 2-player sport, can anybody play squash for college tomorrow? Same thing with the swimming tournament. We need somebody in the freestyle relay. You put your hand up or you say, I'm too busy. One of the more interesting parts of my college life was a couple of my friends from Canada were working for Stephen Hawking. And we used to see Stephen Hawking a lot. He lived across the road from college and used to go past college every morning in his wheelchair. He was often accompanied by his carer. And actually we used to see him in the curry house just around the corner from the college. But 2 of my friends were actually were PhD students working in his lab, and one of them was a very good ice hockey player. The other one had actually played Commonwealth Games badminton, but the ice hockey player got to know Stephen pretty well and realised that Stephen Hawking was into ice hockey. Hawking put the puck on the ice for the Oxford-Cambridge ice hockey match that year. It's actually the oldest ice hockey match in the world, ongoing. And he and his friends developed a little mechanism that threw the puck off the wheelchair to start the game. Those are experiences you can't buy. Spending time with Stephen Hawking, going to a sporting event, absorbing all of that stuff. Difficult to find that at any other organisation in the world. Why would you go to Cambridge? You'd go there for your studies. You'd also go there to enrich your life. and your network. Can we move to the next slide, please, Carl? Who's Cambridge Australia Scholarships? I mean, broadly speaking, we've been around in various guises since the 1980s. Vanessa can step in if I get any of this wrong. We've sent about 1,000 very talented Australian students to Cambridge. We are funded via donors. Most of them have been to Cambridge and are based in Australia and just want to give back, a bit like all the directors. Some of them have made a lot of money and therefore either give money while they're still alive or leave an endowment. Consequently, we have a very nice fighting fund that is locked away with some shrewd investors. Some of my fellow directors can add up and subtract, unlike me, and they invest that money, and consequently each year there is enough money to send roughly 10 to 15 to 20, depending on how much money comes out, Australian scholars to Cambridge. How does that drill down? I think something like 8 to 10 master students usually a year, and probably half a dozen PhD students. Obviously PhDs last for a bit longer, so it's not an exact science. It does depend on the markets as to how many we can send, but we rely entirely on individual and corporate donations and bequests. We have a relationship with the Cambridge Commonwealth, European and International Trust. Really nice lady there called Helen Pennant, who attends our AGMs in Australia once every 2 years. Across most of our scholarships, you know, for every dollar that one of our donors puts in their name, the trust will put in $1. I mean, that may be coming to an end in the post-COVID environment, but generally speaking, listening to Helen, the Cambridge Australia Scholarships Fund is one of their most key relationships. There isn't another country which has an organisation like this. And just to give you a sense, a lot of you will be applying, I'm sure, for Rhodes scholarships, and you will think that the Rhodes Scholarship is the be-all and end-all because it's such a well-known name. Well, we're the same as Rhodes Scholarships, and my understanding is we send more Australians to Cambridge each year than Rhodes do to Oxford. We're just less well known. But our ambition is the same, to send the very cream of the crop to Cambridge, for those students to enjoy their time in Cambridge and to hopefully come back to Australia and be future leaders of this country in whatever area they're specialising. We've got, just in terms of our administration, Vanessa has very kindly joined us. She manages our office. She's the administrative brains behind the operation. She will know more than I do about the detail. If you're applying to be a scholar, she will see your emails and she'll make me aware of that. So very important. Vanessa is extremely important, and you'll be seeing a lot of her if you choose to go down this route. Can we move to the next slide, please? What are my chances? I've just gone through 5 to 10 fully funded scholars. Some of the scholarships, we can say this, are funded sometimes by people from Victoria and New South Wales. So historically, there's been a bit of a bias there, but there is the opportunity for Queensland scholars to apply for those scholarships. And I'm happy to say that this year, a member of the legal fraternity has minted the very first Queensland-based scholarship, especially for law students out of Queensland, can be from QUT, for example. And I know that Vanessa has given me a list of applicants who have successfully won a place at Cambridge and are now looking for that funding. Why would you apply for our funding? Because it's pretty generous. I paid my own way at Cambridge. I didn't have a Cambridge Australia scholarship to fall back on. I won a couple of bursaries when I was there, which helped. But if you're in the position I was in, apply for Cambridge Australia scholarships, because it's probably worth between $80,000 and $100,000 a year. It's flights, it's accommodation, it's living expenses, it's tuition fees. It really is extremely generous. And for a PhD, over the course of those 3 years, it'll set you up for life. So masters applicants, would have really helped me if I'd have been in that space. And PhDs, you know, it's a godsend. Can we move to the next slide? Yeah, so the Queensland Scholarship, Justice Anthony Philippides, High Court Justice, who went to Cambridge herself. She is, I think she was one of the first women to be appointed a High Court judge from this state. And she's got a very dear passion around ensuring, I think there's probably a bit of an Oxford bias within the Queensland law profession. So she's wanting to rebalance that. There are a few key people from Cambridge. She's wanting to ensure that continues. And she's also very interested in people who come from a position of disadvantage, whether that's from a community or a regional area that's doing it hard, or they've had personal circumstances. She wants to see those people being given opportunities they might not either be, you know, be given otherwise. To be eligible, you need to be a resident in Queensland or be graduating from a university in Queensland. So QUT graduates qualify. If you're a Queenslander, if you know somebody in Queensland who's studying law somewhere else, they could qualify. If you've got a friend overseas who's a Queenslander, they're at an international institution, but are looking to move from undergraduate to postgrad, they could qualify. And as I said, consideration particularly will be given to candidates' personal circumstances. So we're moving into a space now where we've got a short list of about 6 for this very first scholarship. We're making a presumption that you will be able to travel at the end of this year, who knows? There'll be a selection panel that includes Dominic Catter, who's he won one of these scholarships once upon a time. He's a barrister and a former board member of CAS, and also Selwyn Button, who works for the federal government as in the Indigenous space. He's a senior officer, the registrar of an Indigenous agency within the federal government system. So he's got an expertise around disadvantage. He has a number of directorships within Queensland, and he is a gentleman from Cherbourg, the Warravinda area. So those are the guys that, if you were to move forward with myself, we'll be assessing you across a range of your academic achievements up to this date, and your future plans for your academic studies at Cambridge, your extracurricular activities and the type of person you are, and of course this sort of element of you know, disadvantage or the circumstances you find yourself in. So can we move to the next slide, please? Come on. You've got to have applied to Cambridge, and that sort of Vanessa's the expert here, but it's kind of a laborious process, and it's an inexact science, and only Cambridge can do what Cambridge does. And as I said, you've got to find a department, you've got to find a course, you've got to find a college, and you've got to be accepted by all of the above. Now, when you are accepted by all of the above, it's at that point that you then tick a box essentially to say, I'd like to be considered for a Cambridge Australia scholarship. So we will assess those people who we know have won a place at the university. And I think if you might let Vanessa answer more detailed questions at the end of this presentation. Do you hold an Australian citizenship? Have you completed the majority of your pre-tertiary level education in Australia? If you do, you qualify. It's not to say that if you haven't, you don't. But we're trying to ensure that we're identifying people who've got a genuine connection with Australia and want to return to Australia after they've been to Cambridge to benefit the country. We don't want, we're trying to ensure that we don't find, I suppose, having worked in the Olympic movement myself, you find that some people choose a flag of convenience to try and win an Olympic medal. You know, they work out that they had a grandmother from the Bahamas so that they can be in the Bahamas water polo team and try and win a medal that route. CAS is trying to ensure that we get genuine Australians going to Cambridge so that they can come back and benefit the country. Now then, I can only see half of this slide, so I'm going to guess at some of the words on there because I'm looking at some of you. But I mean, I think it goes without saying that in order to get into Cambridge, you've got to have demonstrated some serious academic credibility. As I said, I'm not winning any any awards at Mensa. My application was from, so I was probably a middle of the road scholar as an undergraduate, but I had an idea for a master's thesis, and I managed to put my case forward and win a place at Cambridge, and probably produce the best bit of work that I ever produced, during school or any university years, right at the back end there, right. The last bit of work I did was the best bit of work I did. But I think my message is, if I can win a place at Cambridge, so can plenty of other people. So don't be put off by the idea that you've got to be the best of the best of the best. If you've got a sharp mind and a good idea and you're passionate about a subject, and I've said before that there's a whole range of courses on offer, you can get in. Once you've got in, then we can help you get there and make it as economically comfortable as possible. More importantly, we want to find people who've got excellent character, a genuine commitment, have an idea of ethical leadership, and have a sense of wanting to give back afterwards. PhD, I'm not an expert in this section, but we do have a professor down at the ANU who did criminology at Cambridge. He's a really nice man, and he does all our assessments. So I think the state boards do a preliminary assessment, and then he really gets down into the detail of the PhDs, because he's doing this as a day job. He's teaching PhD scholars as a day job, and he's done it himself. So he's got a collection of similarly minded people down in Canberra, and they sort of, I believe they sort of get a short list, and then they really drill down into who are the cream of the crop, who's likely to achieve really strong honours, and be somebody that CAS can be proud of in the years to come. So you don't have to have completed your undergraduate course, but you must be near completion to apply for the university. So if you're in your first year, this is an opportunity to think about what you might do when you're in year 3, as an example. Vanessa, jump in if I'm getting this wrong, please.
No, that's entirely correct. And I think also for the PhDs to really consider the fact that we don't interview for these scholarships. It's purely based on your application and on your academic merit. So if you are wanting to move forward with a PhD scholarship, please put in the time and the effort into your application, because that's what we see.
I might move to the next. I'm sure you've been, I don't think there's any problem, Carly or Vanessa, if this presentation is handed across to anybody who wants it. And, I've probably talked for too long, but I'm very happy to take any questions the group has.
So feel free, if you would prefer, you can type something into the chat, or you can unmute your mic and ask the question out loud.
Question coming in: is there an age limit for anybody applying? Not to my knowledge, no. If you've got the credentials, you're more than welcome to apply. As I said, in my graduate college, I was, I think, 23 when I got there. I was one of the younger ones, and there were a whole range of age groups. Even people into their 50s and 60s when I was there. So, no, you're neither too young nor too old. Question, I can't see the whole of that question. PhD applications, is it preferable for research proposal topics to be specialised? Vanessa, do you want to answer that?
I'll do my best. I believe that as you're going through the application process that Cambridge takes you through, it will help you narrow down exactly how specific you need to be within the application. By the time it gets to us, you've already been accepted into your course. So really, I think the PhD application will be guided by what is provided by the university on their application process. And if you want anything more specific than that, I can find more information through our director at ANU, who's the PhD specialist.
I think if you're thinking about this, you're probably best placed to speak to Carly, or indeed your departmental head, or your lead academic tutor. Certainly, in my experience was I was not at Cambridge for undergraduate, but my tutor had studied at Cambridge himself, and he reached an assessment that I would be suitable to apply. He didn't know whether I'd get in, and in fact, I applied to a different department, and my application was transferred to the Scott Polar Research Institute because of the specialist nature of my proposal. So I think the key, as Vanessa said, is to get online, understand what course at Cambridge suits you, and then go through the application process with the support of Carly and any academic tutor you have at your current institution.
And we do have some academics at QUT who have been to Cambridge, so I can get you in touch with them as well.
Are there any other questions that are on people's minds, or questions, non-academic questions about what it's like at Cambridge? The most important thing to remember is that we're better than Oxford, and our blue, our Cambridge blue, is much nicer to look at. So if a lot of our applicants are courted by Oxford and sort of by the North American universities, but we would welcome your applications, your interest, and I can vouch for the fact that you'll have a great year or three if you're successful.
So I've just popped up the contact details for Vanessa and Cambridge. If you do have further questions that you think would be best answered by them, you can get in contact with them, or if there's something QUT specific, you can get in contact with me, of course.
I think Sarah, I think there's a question there from the group. Is there any special quality that Cambridge will be looking for? Cambridge itself will just be looking for academic ability, and they'll be trying to assess the quality of what you've done and the likely quality of what you're looking to deliver in the future. For CAS, for a master's scholar, it's slightly different. As I said, we're looking for that rounded individual who can demonstrate excellence in a range of different spheres, not just academic. We're looking for somebody of high moral character, and we're looking for somebody who we might presume would be a leader in the future back in Australia in whatever field they end up in, whether that's arts, sciences, music, film, politics, you name it. We're looking to make sure that the best of Australia gets the opportunity to study at the top institution and come back, benefit the country.
Well, if there's no more questions, we might wrap up there. So thank you so much, Philip and Vanessa. Really appreciate your advice today.
Pleasure.
And we will definitely be in contact if we have any specific questions.
Thanks, Callie.
And thank you for inviting us.
No problem. And thanks everybody for coming today.
And good luck with everybody who's thinking of applying. We look forward to sending you off to Cambridge in due course.
Thank you very much.